So now I've started browning the chicken. These are chicken thighs. I marinated the chicken thighs in 1 tablespoon of paprika and 2 tablespoons of olive oil just to get this great color started. There's plenty of olive oil in the pan. This is pork that is cut into 1-inch squares. Let this sizzle and cook, stirring it. Keep the heat regulated. You're going to keep regulating the heat up and down so that everything gets cooked appropriately. First the meat, then I'm just cutting an X in my tomato. I peeled and seeded most of my tomatoes. Just do that. Put this into boiling water just for like a minute until the skin loosens. Snails, believe it or not, were once the most commonly used meat in the Valencian paella as they were cheap. For special occasions, they added rabbit or duck, but nowadays you can have chicken, you can have pork, you can have all kinds of fish, lobster. Delicious things can go into a paella. Okay, this tomato is ready to take out. I'll let it go into ice water for a second. Paella, the name, comes from the Latin word patella, which means pan. And it's from this word that the Valencian word paella is derived. Your vegetables, your fish, everything should be in small bowls ready to add to the paella before you start cooking. Now here's our tomato. I cut it in half this way. And you see there are seeds. Just use a spoon or your finger to take the seeds out of the tomato. Chop up your tomato. All the pieces should be approximately the same size. And now add your onion all over. This is 1 large white onion, a Spanish onion for the paella. 2 tablespoons of finely chopped garlic over the whole thing. It is looking so gorgeous. And you'll see as you layer this, it just gets more and more beautiful. Now the tomatoes. These will start to exude some of their tomato juice. The peppers. 1 red pepper cut into slices. This has been seeded. 1 green pepper, same thing. Seeded and sliced. Already a pretty picture. So this will take about 5 to 8 minutes, depending on the temperature. So pretty. A little sprinkling of salt, a little bit of black pepper. We want a really, really flavorful paella. It's just an art to make one beautiful. Now you can add your squid. This is 1 1/4 pounds of calamari. And spread this around. This should be fresh, not frozen. This starts to firm up almost immediately upon reaching some heat here. And we have 12 jumbo shrimp. I'm going to add these by hand. These are beautiful. Now, shrimp don't take a long time to cook, but this is the right time to add them to your paella. Now, while this is cooking up, in a bowl, you're going to add cognac, about 1/3 of a cup of cognac, 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt, and 2 teaspoons of saffron, which you grind in a mortar and pestle. Now, as you hear, I'll add a tiny bit of salt here. It does help with the grinding. Add this to your cognac. The liquid takes on a beautiful, beautiful pinkish yellow color. This is going to make this the paella valenciana that we're looking for. Now to your cognac, add 1 scoop of hot chicken broth. All of this chicken broth is going to be added to the paella once the rice is added. As you watch me do this, I hope that you're thinking, wow, this is a dish that I can make. It's a great Christmas Eve dish for a party. It is a great summertime dish. 1 1/2 pounds of short-grained white rice. This is short-grained rice specifically grown for dishes like this, paella, to be cooked in a paella pan. Now stir this a little bit. The rice starts to saute. It gets a little opaque. And what's going to happen is that the rice gets a little crusty on the bottom of the pan. And that crustiness is called a sokora. And sokora, if your paella doesn't have it, well, it's not a paella. Okay, so this is looking extremely good. I'm now going to add my saffron cognac, salt, and chicken stock mixture. And from here, your rice will start to plump up, get tender. I'm just going to add maybe another little bit of stock. You want to have enough so that it absorbs into the rice. And now I'm going to sprinkle on the green peas. We have a few more things to tuck into here. Every time I make it, it's a challenge to believe that it's going to actually fit all in this paella pan. And tuck in your shellfish. We're using clams and mussels that have been well scrubbed. If you were going to add lobsters, you would do those pretty much now too. But this pan wouldn't be big enough for all of this plus lobster. So get a slightly bigger pan. So a few little tips for you. Short-grained rice is characterized by fat, almost round grains that have a higher starch content than the long grain or medium-grained rice. And when it's cooked, it becomes quite moist and viscous, causing the grains to stick together. Other short-grained rices grown in Spain have a unique capacity to absorb large amounts of broth. That's the rice we're using here. And it's starting to get plump and starting to cook nicely. So now I'm adding the mussels. Make sure the mussels, if that's open like that, you don't want it. They have to be tightly closed, well scrubbed mussels. And your mussels should be kept icy cold until they go into the paella. And the last vegetable, string beans. These are pre-cooked. I already blanched these. And these are haricots verts. You can use regular string beans, golden string beans, whatever you choose. Is your mouth watering yet? Are you drooling? It's important not to stir the paella near the very end of this process because you want the rice to start sticking to the bottom of the pan to create that sokora, which is the sign of a well-made paella. And today's recipe, for me, is a special one. It's my mom's, filled with fluffy rice, pine nuts, raisins, herbs, and cooked on a bed of fresh tomatoes. Now, these peppers are just beautiful. They're very firm. They have taut skin. They're pretty when they're baked. And you can use red peppers or green peppers. Now, this one will have a hard time standing up, so you can just take off a little bit of the bottom. Yeah, now it stands. Try not to pierce the flesh because you want this filling to stay in the pepper. This one is nice and blocky and even, and it stands up nicely. So this has this top, and this has this top, and we're ready to go with our filling. Now, first thing to do is soak 3/4 of a cup of plump raisins with a 1/2 cup of fresh squeezed orange juice. The raisins are so good when they're soaked like this and they get really nice and plump. Now cook your rice. Now you can use already cooked rice, or if you don't have any, cook 1 cup of rice in 2 cups of water. Long grain rice is very popular because after cooking, the grains remain fluffy and separate. So that's what you should choose for this particular dish. Something like a Basmati rice or a long grain white rice. A good choice. In another pot, we can start the filling. Now in this pot are 4 tablespoons of butter. Saute 1 small white onion or yellow onion, finely chopped, and add 2 shallots. A little more flavorful than the basic onion, and it adds a nice color and another slightly different flavor to the stuffed peppers. So salt and pepper, let those onions saute. So now the rice is boiling. Reduce the heat and cook for approximately 15 minutes. And as soon as the onions become translucent, add 1 yellow pepper, finely chopped, 2 sprigs of fresh thyme, just the nice leaves. It smells good. a quarter of a cup of basil leaves, finely chopped, and the 3/4 of a cup of raisins soaked in the orange juice, nice and plump. I'll add my pinoli nuts. These are 1/4 of a cup of pine nuts or pinoli nuts that I've lightly toasted on a tray in a 350-degree oven for about 10 minutes, just until they're golden, just until they're aromatic. And now you can add to this the cooked rice. Obviously, this rice is not quite done, but I do have what we call in the trade a swap out. Here is our swap out. I once went on a camping trip up to Baxter State Park in Maine, and I took a big container full of these stuffed peppers. We all had a feast. We didn't catch any fish that day, not so good. So here is our filling, seasoned with a little bit more salt, a little bit more pepper, and voila, that's it. You can now stuff the peppers. So here's our casserole. We've sliced and seeded some plum tomatoes. This will be the base of our stuffed peppers. And just line a casserole. You can do this in an enameled cast iron Dutch oven, or you can do it in a casserole like this. So there, that's just about enough. And some sprigs of thyme in the bottom, just for added flavor. And you'll eat the tomatoes. They'll make kind of a puree in the bottom. And some lovely sprigs of chervil. You could use some oregano if you like, sage, whatever. I have a little herb garden outside my kitchen door, and I'm always snipping. And now to fill the peppers, use a large spoon and ladle right into the pepper itself. I don't even add any more salt and pepper. You can, but you can season afterward. So this will get stood up right there. Another pepper, and just fill nice and full. Don't pack. If you pack, it might split the pepper. This should be enough to fill 6 large bell peppers. Take it from me, my mom never wasted a grain of rice. So here goes the other one. Oh, this looks so pretty. Now place the little tops around the peppers. After they're cooked, you can put them back on. I'll be a little bit like Big Martha. Here, this one needs a little bit more. We called my mom Big Martha, even though she was about maybe 5 inches shorter than I. Okay, so here, ready to go into the oven. I'm going to make a little envelope out of aluminum foil, but I don't want the foil touching the peppers. Now, a little sprinkling of olive oil down the sides of the peppers. And cover with parchment. We don't like the metal touching the food. And fold up your envelope. They'll steam a little bit, and you can open them up to brown them if you want toward the end. But these go into a 350-degree oven for about 50 minutes, and then uncover them for another 10 minutes. Now, fresh out of the oven, don't you think they look really good? I'm going to eat one, and then I'm going to take the rest to my daughter, Alexis, and her kids. Her kids love stuffed peppers. And put the little top right here, just to prop it up. A tiny sprinkling of olive oil. A little bit of chopped chervil for color. The reputation of Iranian cooks rests on the quality of their tahdig, which is the term for the golden crispy rice that forms on the bottom of the pan in which it's cooked. Today's version goes one step further. The rice is cooked on top of thinly sliced potatoes for the tahdig with zibzahmani, potatoes cooked in sizzling butter. So you're getting two things. You're getting that crispy rice and crispy potatoes. Now, Basmati rice is what we're using for the Persian rice. It's a long-grained variety of rice that was originally found growing at the foothills of the Himalayas thousands of years ago. We're cooking it in a big pot of rapidly boiling water, into which a little bouquet garni, or a little spice packet, is placed. This has 1 cinnamon stick, a handful of peppercorns, some cardamom seeds, a couple cloves, adds a delicious perfume to the rice, and 2 cups of white basmati rice. And add 1 tablespoon of salt. Bring this to a rapid boil and cover. I have some already cooked to save us a little time, and here it is. So once you discard the little spice bouquet, drain the rice in a strainer. Very, very fragrant rice. And let it sit in the strainer for about 10 minutes to completely drain. Now this is an interesting process, so watch carefully. In a large nonstick skillet, melt 4 tablespoons of butter. Seems like a lot of butter, but we're going to be browning the potatoes and we're going to be flavoring the rice. Now, 2 large Idaho potatoes. Idahos work very, very well for this. And slice on a mandolin to a uniform thinness. And either use a guard or a cloth, as I am, to get down to the last little nubbin of potato. And don't look away while you're doing this, because you may be cooking a slice of your thumb. You don't want to do that. Transfer your rice, which has cooled for about 10 minutes. And you see each grain of rice, and you lift it up, it is individual and firm. Add 2 tablespoons of chopped apricot and 2 tablespoons of golden raisins. And stir this all into the rice. Season with salt. And to this, add your melted butter. This butter in the pan is what's going to create that wonderful tahdig. So you can layer your potatoes right in the butter-lined nonstick skillet, and you can start in the center or you can start on the outside. But just keep going around and around. This will be the beautiful zibzahmahi, which is the potato lining for your tahdig. For me, the addition of a potato in this dish is really special. So that looks perfectly good. And now we can sprinkle the potatoes with 3/4 of a cup of finely chopped cilantro, coriander leaves. And mix your rice with the butter. So beautiful. Now add half the rice. And the rice is infused with this beautiful perfume of the cinnamon and the cardamom and the cloves and the peppercorns. So about half goes in first. And you're going to press this down. And now your remaining rice on top of this. Just want a nice even layer. I first learned how to cook Persian rice from my friend Parveen. She's Persian. And she makes very good Persian food. Now tuck the cheesecloth right on top of the rice. This dish is cooked entirely on top of the stove. Cover, cook it for about 8 minutes, reduce the heat, and cook it for another 20 minutes or so on low. Okay, here we have it. Remove the cheesecloth. The rice smells so good. And then when we turn this out, it will be the beautiful rice dish that we're hoping for. It takes a little bit of control and coordination. I think it's good. Look how beautiful. Horchata. This cinnamon-flavored vanilla rice drink is a frothy Mexican classic with a flavor reminiscent of rice pudding. Grind 6 tablespoons of rice. A little spice grinder like this works very well. You want to really pulverize the rice. Grind it until it resembles a fine powder. Traditionally, the rice would be ground on a grinding stone in a mano imitate very, very nicely. Now this, with 1 1/4 cups of whole blanched almonds and 1 cinnamon stick and 2 1/2 cups of hot tap water. Now just leave this covered on your counter for at least 6 hours, better overnight. And then tomorrow, when you're ready, you can just put it in the blender with some ice and make a delicious, delicious, refreshing drink. Now, some horchatas are made with nuts or fresh fruits, but we're making rice, almonds, a little flavoring of cinnamon, and take that cinnamon stick out. Add 1 cup of sugar to your almonds and your soaked rice, and a large pinch of coarse salt. And now blend this a bit at a time until it is all combined. Makes a lot of noise. Now be sure to pulverize thoroughly and pour into your sieve. I've lined the sieve with about 8 layers of cotton cheesecloth. And this gives a very, very fine consistency to your drink. If you want it thinner than this, you can add more water. But you'll have a very nice, creamy milk. Start preparing this the day before you wish to serve it for best results. So before you pour, stir well and pour either in a glass with ice or without ice. I think you'll find this a very refreshing, delicious drink. See you next time. Enjoy.